Today is April 23rd, 2020. Coming up on Roland Martin Unfiltered, we'll be joined by Congressman Stephen Horsford of Nevada as he gives us the latest on what's happening with the money that Congress will be passing to help small businesses. Will black folks get enough of that? What the hell is going on in China attacking Africans over coronavirus? Washington Post editor Karen Attia will join us to talk about what's going on there. Also, folks, we'll talk about the health disparities that go back decades when it comes to the United States. Also on today's show, Senator Mitch McConnell, he pretty much saying the hell with these states, especially blue states. Y'all got funding problems, you can file for bankruptcy. Folks, got a jam-packed show for you. In addition to that, the second hour, Black Women's Roundtable are going to have a 90-minute discussion of the power of black women, the vote, and the election. You don't want to miss that. A phenomenal lineup of guests. All of that coming up right now. It's time to bring the funk. I'm Roland Martin Unfiltered. Let's go.
He's got it. Whatever the miss, he's on it. Whatever it is, he's got the scoop, the fact, the find. And when it breaks, he's right on time. And it's rolling. Best believe he's knowing. Putting it down from sports to news to politics. With entertainment just for kicks, he's rolling. It's on go, roll, roll, y'all. It's Roland Martin, yeah. Rolling with Roland now. He's funk, he's fresh, he's real, the best, you know he's Roland Martin now. Martin.
All right, folks, as of today, 876,156 confirmed cases of coronavirus in the United States and 3 territories. 49,648 deaths. Folks, we are just short of 50,000 deaths due to coronavirus. 85,000 people have recovered. Now, in his daily briefing, New York Governor Andrew Cuomo said that although the curve continues to flatten, New York is not where they want to be.
The hospitalization rate is down again, so that is good news. The overall, if you project the curve, everybody's looking at curves nowadays. If you look at the curve continues to go down. And that's also in the total hospitalization number. Bounces up and down a little bit, but it's clearly down. Number of intubations bounces a little bit, but it's also clearly down. The number of new COVID cases walking in the door or being diagnosed is relatively flat. That is not great news. We'd like to see that going down, but it's not going up either. Number of lives lost is still breathtakingly tragic, 438. That number is not coming down as fast as we would like to see that number come down. And what we're looking at this point is, okay, we're on the downside of the curve. The numbers are trending down. Do they continue to trend down, or do they pop back up? If they continue to trend down, how fast is the decline, and how low will the decline go? In other words, if 1,300 people, or about that number, keep walking in the door, then you're going to have a hospitalization rate proportionate with the number of people walking in the door. So we want to see the number of people walking in the door reduced, the number of new infections reduced, so we hit a low plateau, if you will.
All right, folks, in that same news conference, Governor Andrew Cuomo was livid after he heard the remarks of Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. Mitch McConnell actually said that for these states that are frankly Democratic or blue states with their funding problems, they can just file for bankruptcy. Cuomo was not happy, and he lit into Mitch McConnell.
Just go back to my self-proclaimed Grim Reaper, Senator McConnell. for another second. He represents the state of Kentucky, okay? When it comes to fairness, New York State puts much more money into the federal pot than it takes out, okay? At the end of the year, we put in to that federal pot $116 billion more than we take out, okay? His state, the state of Kentucky, takes out $148 billion more than they put in, okay? So he's a federal legislator. He's distributing the federal pot of money. New York puts in more money to the federal pot than it takes out. His state takes out more than it puts in. Senator McConnell, who's getting bailed out here? It's your state that is living on the money that we generate. Your state is getting bailed out, not my state.
All right, folks, joining us right now is Congressman Stephen Horsford of Nevada. Congressman, welcome back to Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Thank you, Roland, for having me on. Appreciate it.
So what do you make of these comments by Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, pretty much saying, you're in a blue state, screw you, file for bankruptcy?
The comments by Mitch McConnell are outrageous. They're irresponsible. And as a former state senator myself, I know very well what these budgets mean to the essential services and the essential workers that are funded. Governor Cuomo is absolutely right. In fact, Kentucky is ranked number 27 out of 50 states for the amount of funding that they got for this Paycheck Protection Program. My home state of Nevada is 43rd in the ranking of funding that our small businesses got. So the Senate Majority Leader is fine when it's money for his state. He falls over himself to help those special interests, but he's not willing to help the first responders, the heroes who are literally on the front lines providing essential services to each one of our constituents. We're in a pandemic, and that requires us to work together with our partners at the state and local level to make sure that our constituents are healthy and well and get the economic relief that they need right now.
Continue to characterize this virus.
So troubling by this, what's so troubling by when you look at these comments from McConnell, as Cuomo said, wait a minute, states like New York and New Jersey and others, they are sending money.
The scientists, not only in S&T and the
they're actually,
but to the larger scientific and R&D community.
They're actually sending money back to the federal government. And so he's like, you know what, I don't care about y'all. And the problem is he's just not hurting the governor. They're constituents. They're American citizens in these states.
They are not just the American people, the families, businesses, workers who are being affected. It's just irresponsible. And look, if Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell doesn't want to lead, then my message is get out of the way and let us do our job. The House voted today to provide $484 billion of funding. Had it not been for the House Democrats and Mitch McConnell had gotten his way, they would have only provided additional money to small businesses. And look, they needed money to businesses, but we also need money for hospitals. We also were able to secure $25 billion for testing. There's one city in my district, Roland, that 66% of the deaths in this city in North Las Vegas are African Americans who died from COVID-19. That's 3 times the percentage of the population. So I need these resources. I need them in my cities. I need them throughout every part of my state. And I'm working hard to make sure that we get that funding. So I'm calling on legislative leaders. I don't even think we should go home. I think Congress needs to stay in session. We need to pass the next round of funding. Mitch McConnell, either get on board or get out of the way.
Let's talk about money for small businesses. And we just found today that Ruth Chris Steakhouse, they're sending the money back that they receive from this. That's a huge deal there, because what we have discovered is that a lot of small businesses did not get the money they should have been getting. Also, you've got this company out of Texas, a Trump donor, who hires lobbyists. He ends up getting $53 million for his hotel business. Guess what? I know most black businesses can't run out and hire 2 lobbying firms to make sure they get the most money from any other small business as a result of that money. What is Congress doing to ensure there's fairness in this system?
Well, it's a great question, Roland, and it's one that a number of our businesses, black-owned, women-owned businesses, have asked that very question. I want to commend Chairwoman Maxine Waters, the Congressional Black Caucus, for fighting hard. We were actually able to carve out $60 billion of new funding that will be dedicated to community development finance institutions that work primarily with black-owned, minority-owned businesses, women-owned businesses. We also were able to get $30 billion carved out for community banks and credit unions, so that what we were hearing, and I heard directly from the business owners in my district, was they weren't being treated fairly by the big banks. In fact, one of the banks said you already had to have a loan with them in order to even apply for PPP, even though that was not one of the requirements in the legislation that we passed. So now this new funding,
and that's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about right there. Banks creating their own systems that block people out. So they're really helping businesses that already have small business loans with them. So Congress sets the rules, but the banks create their own rules?
And they charge fees for these loans. I read a report that said that banks were going to make up to $10 billion in fees for administering the loans. Look, I don't have any problem with them making some portion of money for helping to get this money out. But the fact that they were creaming with certain businesses being eligible and leaving out the hardest hurt businesses and those that needed it the most, we take objection with. And that is why we call for congressional oversight. The fact that somebody can hire a lobbyist so that the president's friends can get somehow better treatment. The fact that Mitch McConnell's state is getting more money than states like Nevada, we have an issue with that. I have small businesses that are being denied the ability to even apply for the funding because a portion of their revenue comes from gaming. We've been calling on the Trump administration to overrule that guidance so that these businesses have an equal shot and aren't being discriminated against, so that they can get this funding as well. So you're right. These are the issues that we've been hearing from our business owners, black business owners, women business owners, who are really the engines of our economy. And we have to make sure that a greater share of this funding gets to them with the second round of funding that we approved today.
All right. So the money today, what's the oversight? That's the key. Because as long as these banks can do what the hell they want to do, and then it's after the fact, well, it doesn't matter, because if all the money is gone for the second time after the fact, it doesn't matter.
So we approved a congressional oversight today of the PPP program. And as you know, Whip Jim Clyburn is also overseeing a coronavirus committee as well, based on all of the funds, not just this program, but all of the response funds. But specifically, the legislation today that we voted for requires the SBA and Treasury to report on the number of minority, women, veteran-owned businesses by size, by type of business, by region. We got a report last week from the SBA, but it did not include demographic data. It only said the size of the business, not if it was black-owned. So now with this new language in this bill, the SBA will be required to report out on that information, and we will hold them accountable to how equitable those funds are actually dispersed.
All right, Congressman Steve Horsford of Nevada. We certainly appreciate it, sir. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Roland. Have a good day. Stay safe.
All right, then. Now, folks, I want to bring in my panel. Joining me right now is Dr. Greg Carr, his chair, Department of Afro-American Studies, Howard University, Reese Colbert, Black Women Views, also Erica Savage Wilson, of course, with Savage Podcast. All right, I just got to go right there. Greg, this is what we are seeing right now. We are seeing, first of all, I want to deal with Mitch McConnell first. We're going to come back to the small business situation. What Mitch McConnell is doing is exactly what Republicans did when they passed that tax cut. It was designed to take money from blue states to say, screw you, and we're going to send it to red states. The reason so many Republicans in California lost is because of the money that was stripped from Californians as a result. This is what I keep trying to explain to people. The evil nature of Republicans in leadership. They don't give a damn. It's an election year, and Mitch McConnell is going to do whatever he can to screw states that do not support Donald Trump.
Yes, he is. And fortunately, the Crypt Keeper is going to screw himself. The interview he gave with his fellow Crypt Keeper, Hugh Hewitt, where he talked about these states as states that needed their pension funds bailed out, was a direct shot against organized labor. We see in Wisconsin that this same hillbilly horde is getting ready to show up at the State House tomorrow in Wisconsin. And at the same time, you have the Wisconsin Republican Party telling them, leave your Confederate flags, your Trump paraphernalia, and your guns at home. What does that mean? That means that Mitch McConnell, clearly one of the most reckless, feckless, and unprincipled politicians in the history of America, is appealing to a dying, shrinking base. And I loved when you put Governor Cuomo there, because Cuomo spelled it out. This is a federal state in which New York pays more than it takes out, and Kentucky is going to be harmed. Finally, I'll say this very quickly. In that same state of Wisconsin, where Hugh Hewitt has set up his little Crypt Keeper base for a number of years, and he was the one who interviewed McConnell on this, you've got polling data that shows that in this recent election that the Republicans thought they were going to hurt the Democrats in, people in counties in Wisconsin who have higher rates of COVID-19 infection, even conservatives, were more likely to vote for the progressive candidates in this previous election. What Mitch McConnell is doing is ensuring he's going to go into political crypt sooner rather than later, because his base may just desert him as they begin dying.
Bottom line here, Erica, what we're seeing is we are seeing exactly how these folks operate, and you're seeing also on the small business side where these folks are able to go out, get these lobbyists to ensure they get the most money. I mean, this guy in Dallas was bitching and moaning, okay, oh my God, how his business was just destroyed, yet him and his dad laid off 95% of their employees, but they took a $2 million dividend, and now they got $53 million from the federal government. I mean, this is the kind of crap people were warning Democrats, saying you cannot allow it to happen because it should be a fair system and not who can run out and hire Republican lobbyists to ensure they get money.
Absolutely, Roland. And think about it. If in 2018, during the midterms, had the Democrats not won the House, this would not even be a conversation that we're having right now. So I'm going to borrow a term from the Reaganites and remix it a bit. The welfare kings are really showing themselves. And that's what people need to see, that essentially what Ruth Chris did, and I know another big name corporation that was shamed into giving the money back. So we have $30 million that went back into the SBA program because they received these large bailouts, is really what the game has been all along. We're also seeing why it is so very important for people to be involved in politics at every level, because all of these individuals that are making these decisions are elected officials. On the piece around lobbyists, thinking about who has $50,000 extra to hire someone to have a really good conversation, hardly anyone. And so the oversight is the other piece that really needs to happen, and hoping that the media, mainstream media, will not continue to allow the spin that Trump used in the impeachment hearings to say that it is indeed a witch hunt. It is not a witch hunt. You're talking about over $400 billion that's been allocated to ensure that during this public health crisis that there's PPE to make sure that those businesses and churches and all of those essential folks that really need money do, in fact, get that money.
Reese, people better understand this is the game they play, and Democrats have got to be just as ruthless in dealing with these Senate Republicans.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. At the same time, the Senate Democrats only have so much. I think they've been very effective in winning some key concessions from the Senate Republicans, but we've seen, I mean, what did Cuomo call him? The Grim Reaper. Moscow Mitch is another name for him. Mitch McConnell is completely corrupt. And for all of the emphasis that Republicans supposedly have on the economy, California has the 5th largest economy in the world. It's larger than the United Kingdom. New York has the 11th, I believe, or is it the 13th? Sorry, the 13th largest economy in the world, which is larger than Russia. So these blue states that Mitch McConnell wants to demonize and say, hey, go bankrupt, who gives a shit? These are the people these are the states and the taxpayers that are powering the government, the federal government, and the world economy. So we cannot just be dismissive of that. And I think to what you mentioned earlier, Roland, Republicans got wiped out in California because of dirty tricks like this. You know, repealing the SALT deduction, knowing that it would disproportionately hurt people in blue states. And we have another election coming up. And guess what? Even if by some miracle Trump survives, these Republicans are going to be wiped out by people like Mitch McConnell.
Well, that's exactly the case there. And I think we played just one of those sound bites from Andrew Cuomo. I think we have a second one. Why don't you go ahead and fire that one?
Vicious is saying, when Senator McConnell said, this is a blue state bailout. What he's saying is, if you look at the states that have coronavirus problems, they tend to be Democratic states. New York, California, Michigan, Illinois, they are Democratic states. So if you fund states that are suffering from the coronavirus, they're Democratic states. Don't help New York State because it is a Democratic state. How ugly a thought. I mean, just think of what he's saying. People died. 15,000 people died in New York, but they were predominantly Democrats. So why should we help them? I mean, for crying out loud, if there was ever a time you're going to put aside your pettiness and your partisanship and this political lens that you see the world through, Democrat and Republican, and we help Republicans, but we don't help Democrats. That's not who we are. It's just not who we are as a people. I mean, if there's ever a time for humanity and decency, now is the time. And if there was ever a time to stop your obsessive political bias and anger, which is what it's morphed into, just a political anger. Now is the time. And you want to politically divide this nation now with all that's going on? How irresponsible and how reckless. I'm the governor of all New Yorkers, Democrat, Republican, Independent. I don't even care what your political party is. I represent you. And we are all there to support each other. This is not the time or the place or the situation to start your divisive politics. It is just not. And that's why, look, our rule has been very simple from day one. There is no red and blue. There should have never been a red and blue when it comes to any important issue. But certainly not now.
Again, I mean, what you're seeing here, what we're seeing here, point blank, Greg, is the kind of hardcore cold politics. And I think people need to understand this is what you're voting for in November. This is what you're voting against in November. You're voting against folks who also are supporting voter suppression, people who don't want mail-in ballots to take place because, again, this is not let me be real clear. I've never self-identified as a Republican. I've never self-identified as a Democrat. I look at issues. But this is right here why I said I will never be able to support Republicans and the things that they do if they want to be unfair, if they want to be evil, if they want to be callous. And when you are doing these type of things, when you're screwing people out of their right to vote, you do not have a right to be in public office, and Democrats should be hitting this hard. And in fact, Greg, you've already heard McConnell even say he can't wait for May 4th for them to be back in session to get back to confirming judges, because he says leave no judge behind. They're even going to older judges and asking them to retire so they can appoint 35 and 40-year-old white men.
That is what they're doing, and I applaud Senator McConnell, because Senator McConnell is going to make it much more easier to run the Mack truck of humanity over his racist, soon for us to be rid of behind. It's another reason, listening to Cuomo again, who has political challenges from his left in New York State even. I mean, there are real political differences with Andrew Cuomo, but he has set some of that aside to say, I'm in charge of the state for everyone. And it's another reason I'm very much looking forward to the conversations you're going to have with Professor McBride, who in his book about epidemics and black people raises the point that at certain moments in the history of a country, the welfare of one group is so deeply intertwined with the welfare of another group that the country has to decide whether they're going to hold on to their racism or they're going to hold on to their country. What Mitch McConnell is doing by pressing his feet to the floor on this, he's going to break white supremacy in this country, because I don't have to like you to want for all of us to be healthy. And what we're seeing with the hillbilly in Georgia, Brian Kemp, we're seeing the mayors step up. One of my students, I was on one of my classes earlier, and she was circulating this piece on social media that said, here are black teenagers in Atlanta said, Miss Keisha say stay indoors. I'm not listening to Brian Kemp. In Florida, you have an unemployment system that is so broken that incompetent governor can't even get the benefits to the people who need them. What these people are going to realize is when you choose your whiteness over your life, you're going to die. And so I encourage Mitch McConnell to continue this, because what he's going to see is that the response to this is going to ensure, as Reese said, that we can maybe finally put these white nationalists on the dustbin of history. It's going to happen sooner rather than later, and he knows it, which is why he's running as his clothes are on fire to the finish line, hoping he gets there before he bursts into flame. But I think he might burst into flame before he gets to the finish line.
Folks, we talk about white supremacy, but we also talk, but look at what's happening to Africans in China. Folks, if y'all have that video, roll that video where you are to see exactly how. Okay, all right, so here to do this here. I'm going to roll the video from here. I'm going to talk over this video. And so this is some video that's been uploaded by folks on social media. And if you're seeing the video, hopefully it's going through, where Africans are being beaten. The Africans are being beaten in markets. In fact, the Chinese were accosted a Nigerian diplomat who was trying to go and rescue his people. This is the kind of thing that's happening there in their country. And for some reason, and first of all, I'm trying to figure out why are they beating Africans for something that did not start in Africa. Coronavirus impacted, first I'll start there in the Wuhan market. In fact, the McDonald's, the corporation had to apologize because at their McDonald's in one of the restaurants in China, they posted a sign saying no Africans allowed. And when that sign hit social media, McDonald's actually apologized. Joining us right now is Karen Attiah. She is with the Washington Post. Karen, y'all, is the Journalist of the Year for the National Association of Black Journalists. Karen, what's going on? What's the deal? Why are Chinese attacking Africans over coronavirus?
Right. So as we know, in the province or the city where this happened in Guangzhou, there is a burgeoning population of Africans who live there. And I think for people to sort of understand, like China and Africa, I mean, in the last 10 to 20 years, China has been really trying to make a lot of inroads into Africa, whether it's investing billions upon billions in infrastructure, airports, roads, Many Chinese are actually moving to the continent, and vice versa. More and more Africans are also moving to China. I think what we're seeing now in terms of Chinese-African relations is this sort of pivot in some ways away from the West towards China that offers more opportunities, more foreign exchange opportunities for Africans. And so, but here what we're seeing is the fact that anti-Blackness is global, right? And if people remember, even with the Ebola situation in 2014 to 2015, globally, this tendency to associate Africans and Black people with disease and poverty is something that I think is global. But what this is showing, I think, for Africans, is that there is no sort of paradise anywhere when it comes to anti-Blackness outside of the continent. And it's shocking in the sense that, just like you said, Roland, this did not start in Africa. If anything, foreigners were the ones that brought it to Africa. My father actually just returned from Ghana, and there, many people are suspicious of foreigners, are suspicious of white and Chinese. Africans, so far, despite the doom and gloom predictions, have actually done a better job in containing the virus, more so than the Western and Asian counterparts. So it really is just pure, unadulterated racism and scapegoating, and it's really harmed China's reputation in the continent now, as you said. Politicians calling ambassadors from China to question them over this. One politician in one African country said, well, we should expel Chinese from there. But I think, again, it just points to this notion that Chinese awareness of race, of justice, of social justice has not matched with its political and economic might and objectives with the continent.
I'm going to bring in my panel right now. Reese, you have a question for Karen.
Yeah, I think it's interesting in terms of what's happening in the United States and the xenophobia in the United States. Is there any sort of, correlation you can see in terms of perhaps people making that consideration as well in China towards people they perceive to be foreigners?
What's intriguing, I just read an article about how, as we know, China's internet and social media networks are heavily censored, and that sort of outward xenophobia and racism is actually not policed very well at all on some of those networks like Weibo. And so this sense that I think for a long time, you'll hear stories of Africans who have had a lot of problems in China when it comes to the awareness or sensitivities to Black people, basically. There was not too long ago, a few years ago, the ad that ran in China for a soap company that had a Black person in the opening scenes, and the Black person uses the soap and then comes out as a white Chinese person. And it was only after international global outcry that the ad was pulled. The awareness, the sensitivity is just not there yet. And perhaps, this outrage, this episode will perhaps lead to a situation where China knows that if it wants to do business with Africa, if it wants to protect its international image, it needs to do better.
Greg.
Yes, it's really an honor. I'm glad to be here with you, Karen. Let me ask you a question about the long-range future of the continent. And I know you, of course, your folks Ghanaian, I'm assuming by Ata We know the relationship between China and Africa has always been complicated. Ghana, for example, I think the Chinese built the University of Ghana, Legon. I mean, when Nkrumah was there and going forward. But I was very encouraged to hear you say that this attitude toward China may be shifting a little bit as China has basically moved into Africa wholesale. Do you see perhaps this moment finally breaking the log jam where continental Africans may not only look at China differently, but act a little differently as China has its designs to basically, in some ways, recolonize the continent?
That's a really, really interesting question. I mean, a lot of people are beginning to look at this issue, and I think Howard French has written an excellent book called China's Second Continent on this very issue. The last travels that I had in Ghana and Nigeria was this sense that, hey, look, like, all right, the Chinese, maybe they're not as warm and friendly, but what they're doing is they're bringing us roads that our governments couldn't do. They're bringing us airports. In fact, the last time I was in my grandmother's house in Ghana, I saw textbooks in Chinese. And wow. So I think that we're seeing this shift, and particularly as the West, as America, as Europe begin to turn inwards, at least at the governmental level, there are other options. As far as like how people look at the continent, you see a lot of cheap Chinese imports flooding markets. Particularly, I'm thinking of the textile market. Chinese counterfeit drugs that are unregulated, that are harming people in Africa. And there's this sense that there is an unwillingness or inability of governments to be able to regulate these products, these cheap and sometimes inferior and harmful products coming from China that are harming people. So I hope, that this really, not just for China, but I think for African governments, and obviously each government is different in how they deal with China, but that there's an increased realization that African governments need to rely on themselves, right? And to rely on homegrown African solutions for African problems type of approach, right? Because at the end of the day, China is going to look out for China. Chinese people are going to look out for the Chinese. Africa needs to think about its own long-term future.
Let's see here. Reese. Or is it Erica? Who's already? I think Reese already asked, right?
Yeah, I did.
So I'm going to go to Erica. Erica, go ahead. Sorry.
Hi, Karen. So the last time I was in Ghana, I was amazed when I went to the township of Pone and saw how the Chinese had pretty much taken over the oil fields. So in thinking about and in seeing that and thinking about African-American businesses that have been impacted as well by a lot of what's happening by way of being evicted, not having business done because of this pandemic, are you seeing how different maybe African-American business leaders are responding to a lot of what's happening, and are they lifting their voices?
Right. I think, and in fact, Roland, I know you went to the year of return last year in Ghana. I think one thing, I mean, with the coronavirus pandemic, that is a big shame, actually, is that for African Americans, those in the diaspora, tourism and investment was starting to become more and more of a priority for governments, particularly in Ghana and Nigeria. So I think that in some ways the crisis could present an opportunity. But right now, the way that African leaders, but the main challenge, I mean, not just public health challenge, that is massive, but the main sort of economic challenge that African governments are going to be concerned about is actually debt relief. And from China, from the West, and a number of governments are looking to try to get their debts from the IMF and the World Bank possibly forgiven. But I do think that this is an opportunity for particularly anybody who cares about the continent. There are so many brands and so many entrepreneurs on the continent that are beginning to flourish. And if we can't forget that many economies on the African continent are some of the fastest growing economies in the world, actually. So I think there is an opportunity for more conscious investment buying a lot of these retailers. I'm thinking of several in Ghana that are online. I think, the main priority right now is obviously for these governments to keep people safe, because we know that the healthcare systems would not be able to handle a full outbreak of the pandemic. But I would encourage people to look at women-led businesses, partnerships, collectives to help them survive, because they're going to be hit extremely hard.
All right, Karen Attia. She's the Global Opinions Editor, The Washington Post, and the 2019 Journalist of the Year for the National Association of Black Journalists. Karen, thanks a lot.
Thank you, Roland.
All right, folks. I was sitting here. I was texting while Karen was talking. Dr. Ebony Hilton. She posted on Twitter that she was just hot with the lies taking place at this White House news conference right now. We're going to have her on tomorrow. But what's so crazy, apparently this idiot Donald Trump has been said something to the effect that allowing the sunlight into your body, y'all, let me just read it. Y'all, Abby Phillips, Abby Phillips tweeted, "Wow, Trump just suggested getting rid of coronavirus by bringing light inside the body, either through the skin or in some other way, or using disinfectant. Is there a way you can do something like that by injection or some other way?" Dr. Birx then comes up and says that sunlight as a treatment for coronavirus, not as a treatment. Y'all, do y'all want to know why we don't take this idiot live? Is because of that. This is precisely why this man is so stupid. He says dumb stuff like that. In fact, Dr. Birx is actually at the podium right now. I'm going to go to her live real quick. We're going to get our next guest ready. But she's probably trying to refute some stupid stuff. Well, actually, so she's already actually stopped talking, and I don't take this idiot live. In fact, no, just go to the idiot. Go to the idiot.
Looking forward to November, the election. Given the risk that the flu and the coronavirus come back, there could be a problem. Do you think there is a risk that there'll be lack of agreement, lack of legitimacy of the results?
You know what? I'm sorry. I just can't, y'all. I can't abuse y'all and let y'all even look at Donald Trump. But bottom line is, what we're dealing with is just crazy people, Greg. I can't imagine being a doctor. I can't imagine being a doctor and you have to stand up there with somebody who just makes stuff up. Just makes stuff up. And you got to sit there and go, okay, I can't embarrass this fool, so how can I go up and now respond after this?
Well, I think clearly, whether it be Fauci, any of the doctors, they've made a choice. They think that by standing there and trying to, massage this message, not only from Trump, who is clearly deteriorating before our very eyes, not only mentally, but even physically, you can just see the weight on him, but by another person who, in some ways, is even more of an apparent sociopath, and that is Smiling Mike Pence, who kind of punctuates his answers with this, well, we're coming and everything. These are two kind of poles on a continuum of sociopath. But if you're a doctor, you've got to make a decision at some point. And I think we might end up seeing a direct confrontation on that White House podium for those who watch it. So another thing I would say is that while we're looking at this kind of distraction, and thank God you don't show it, Roland, as you said, McConnell's going to try to continue to pack the courts. They're going to try to undermine the census, and they're going to try to steal the election of 2020. So while they're letting this clown be a dissembling, deteriorating clown in public every day in his campaign rallies, they are very clearly working to ensure they remain in power, and we cannot lose sight of that fact.
I mean, Reese, I'm showing video of this fool at the podium. Reese, I got to read. This is the quote. "And then I see the disinfectant where it knocks it out in a minute. And is there a way we can do something by an injection inside or almost a cleaning? It would be interesting to check that you're going to have to use medical doctors with. Reese, this fool is saying, could we inject disinfectant inside of humans to stop coronavirus? Damn!
But you know, Donald Trump, people said is what happens when a reality TV show host becomes president. This is what happens when an internet troll becomes president. You know, a person who becomes an expert off of reading a caption. I mean, I saw I'm in that. You know how when you're talking to a troll, you have to try to trace back to where did this kind of originate. And I did see a story that talked about how sunlight is it does kill coronavirus faster if you're in bright sunlight, but that was no way suggesting that sunlight itself is a treatment. There's a difference between a treatment for coronavirus and saying that coronavirus lasts so long under these conditions. And so that's what Donald Trump does. He's an internet troll. He probably actually does get his information. We know he gets it from Fox News, but he also probably is surfing the internet, you know, all these crazy people on Breitbart or whatever else, and picking up whatever kind of conspiracy theories. He's a mean retweeter. He's a conspiracy theorist. He's completely unintelligent. He's belligerent. He's ignorant. He's a buffoon. And he's going to get people killed. Listen, the beaches are reopening in some places. I'm telling you, and this is primarily the white folks, because I think black folks have gotten the message. We have our little secret code on Twitter with the whole G, you know, all that kind of stuff. Don't go out there suntanning and get skin cancer trying to beat coronavirus by burning off your skin, because it's not going to work, no matter what Donald Trump says.
Bob, you would be an absolute fool, Erica, to listen to this idiot as he is talking about disinfectant. Could we somehow inject that into the body of humans? He said the doctors may want to look into that. To me, I'm just waiting, as Greg said a confrontation. I'm just waiting for one of these people to just say, you know what? I gotta cuss this fool out. I'm thinking about that scene when Theo was talking to Cliff Huxtable, you know, that famous scene, and Cliff was like, "That's the dumbest idea I ever heard in my life." I'm waiting for that moment to happen in one of these news conferences, Erica.
Yeah, and I'm not holding my breath. And honestly, I'm going to continue to say that the thief comes to kill, steal, and destroy. And I think that for all of us that have lost people very close to us, I'm thinking about my friend, my dear sister, Femi Anderson. I'm thinking about Rowena Daniels. I'm thinking about J.D. McCrae. These are people that I know that have died as a consequence of coronavirus. So that the political malpractice, just the outright danger that he continues to put people in, because our community is definitely prone to misinformation, and disinformation is literally malpractice that's happening every day. So continuing to combat what Donald Trump gets airtime for 5 days a week, 7 days a week, whenever he opens up his mouth, I think that this show and other shows that do combat by providing facts, that do provide Black experts, is of the utmost importance. And as long as he is allowed the space and the time to be able to do what he does, which does not impact him in a personal way, I think he's going to continue to kill people.
Right now, I want to bring up our next guest because we talk about this whole issue of pandemics. Trust me, in disparities, this goes back a very long time. The book, it's a groundbreaking book published in 1991 by my next guest, looks at the health disparities from the 1900s to present day. The book is From TB to AIDS, Epidemics Among Urban and Black Since 1900. David McBride is the author. He's the professor of African American Studies and African American History at Penn State University. David, glad to have you on Roland Martin Unfiltered. For all these people out here who are going, oh my God, this is a surprise, this is shock. The thing that you are saying point blank is that this is not a shock. This is not something that has happened for the first time. We have seen these health disparities play out for a long period of time, affecting African Americans.
Absolutely right, Roland. And thank you for having me. Can you hear me well?
Yep, we got you just fine.
Okay. Well, yeah, the disparities in Black communities go back to the post-emancipation period. I mean, in the early 1900s, tuberculosis was so widespread throughout the the nation and affecting blacks so extremely that there was many people in the medical establishment actually thought that black Americans would die out as a race, and there was much talk in the medical establishment, that is, physicians and medical schools and health leaders for the government. They actually thought that blacks were going to become extinct from tuberculosis. That's how high the rates were and the mortality rates and such. Fortunately, blacks never bought into this idea, and they began to do what they did for 250 years under slavery. That is, they began to build their own institutions and their own networks and such to not only sustain their health, but to promote themselves as far as health goes. So this is the era around 1900 when you had people like Daniel Hale Williams emerge, the great heart surgeon. You had the development of National Negro Health Week, which was established by Booker T. Washington and also W.E.B. Du Bois and Howard University and Tuskegee University. They put this movement together so that the black community themselves could contribute to promoting their health, on a daily and community and national level. So while the politicians, the Southern white politicians and medical establishment were expecting blacks to die off and withholding resources from black communities and such, because they felt that this was a fait accompli that would only take time, black educators and religious leaders, civic leaders, and community activists put together their own institutions, something that I call throughout my writings, I call it the Black medical world. Black medical schools, black nursing schools, many of them attached to the historic black colleges. They came to the fore, and by World War II, we had about 200 black hospitals in the country. So what this did was many of the black medical professionals and educators and such, they basically laughed at this idea that blacks were going to just die out and that they had certain biological tendencies to be weak in the face of health crises and epidemics like tuberculosis. We go into another stage of black self-help in the health area during and after World War II. We see many of the black medical associations, nursing associations and such, try to keep up with the national modernization of hospitals and such that was occurring around the country. And we see a political movement come out of the ranks of black health promoters, be they in the political sphere or be they in community institutions or religious institutions and such. They all began to say, look, our hospitals are tiny. They can't keep up with these big growth of modern hospitals. So what we need to do is we need to get inside and integrate America's hospital structures. So we see in the 50s, alongside Brown versus Board of Education in the educational sphere, we see movements among black doctors, among the black civil rights organizations and such. We see them pushing to break down the barriers against black patients and black medical providers on the part of federally funded and federally supported and federally licensed hospitals. So the Inhotep movement develops in the late 1950s, led by black physicians. They put a challenge to the American Hospital Association, the AMA, and basically they said, listen, we fought World War II, we fought Korea. Now we need to fight segregation here with regard to discrimination in hospitals.
David, I have questions. I have questions from three of my panelists. I want to first start with Greg Carr, then I'm going to go to Erica, then I'm going to go to Reese. Greg Carr, sure. What's your question for David McBride?
It's very quickly. Thank you, Professor McBride. And only on Roland Martin Unfiltered. Look, if we were not quarantined, I'd get you to sign my copy of your book, brother. You see, I got it right here. But
Okay.
my
Thank you,
question
sir.
really has to do with, given the fact that, and I haven't seen you on any other media outlet, that you really have studied how epidemics have affected the Black community since, as you say, the mid-19th century to now. What do you see as the future of Black institutions intervening as they've done in the past? I'm thinking about Meharry and Howard, Morehouse School of Medicine. What can Black institutions, what do you think Black institutions should be doing at this point in this moment of coronavirus to kind of work together and work with public health officials, civic leaders to kind of really help us combat this issue?
Well, you raise a great question, and you can get a lot of leads and tips by looking at what the Black institutions did during the HIV epidemic. In the early 1980s, the federal government was slow. The disease was heavily stigmatized. Blacks were among groups that were considered, the most marginal in American society. That is your gays and your IV drug users and such. All of these folk were lumped together and ignored. And what many of the Black institutions did was they just ran around, did an end run and began to develop their own community activism. We see, for example, in New York City in the late 1980s, the Black churches got together and formed a Black coalition, Black church coalition, involving over 700 Black churches. And what they did, they became an arm for information dissemination. Black colleges had conferences and such relating to the growing AIDS crisis. So whereas Blacks were ringing a national alarm about AIDS, a lot of the federal healthcare providers and big academic centers and such did not see it as a problem. So Black institutions are pivotal. And that's kind of where I was going with my initial lead-in, at the top of my talk, is that no reduction of health disparities, historic health disparities that Blacks experience can occur without Blacks taking the lead in many different sectors. Black medical leadership, Black religious leadership, Black educational leadership, all of these institutions that are in and have hands on our Black neighborhoods and youth and such, they have to mobilize to the best of their capacity and show up at the table. Roland had a great guest a week or so ago. I think his name was Bryant. His last name was Jonathan Bryant. But he was talking about
John Hope Bryant.
Yes, sir. And he was talking about, we have to have a double consciousness. On one hand, we have to be able to mobilize our core institutions, which we can do, and they're always there for us. Last night, there was a great program on BET, the COVID-19 relief program, where all the superstars, actresses, and musicians and such got together and gave a great shot of inspiration out to the Black public. That's one example. And getting back to the some other strategies, we definitely need Black political activists, just as Roland, your prior guest, Roland, Steve Horsford. We need the Black congressional members to do exactly what they're doing now. They have to step up their advocacy, which they're doing. So I would, to answer Brother Carr's question, there's not one strategy, but a whole slew of strategies that are appropriate for your different institutions and such that Blacks have to galvanize and implement to start to push back this tidal wave of COVID-19 that has fallen on top of our pre-existing tidal wave of health disparities.
Thank you.
All right, folks, here's my next question.
Yes, sir.
All right, Erica, you're up.
Hi, Professor McBride.
Erica or Reese? Who's there? Okay,
I'm
Erica,
here.
go ahead. Erica, go ahead.
Hi, Erica. I can hear you. Sure.
Okay, great, Professor McBride. So I'm from Albany, Georgia. It's great to see you. So very familiar with Milledgeville. And you answered my question bit from Dr. Carr. You answered it partially from what the question Dr. Carr proposed. I'm just really wondering about how that information can be distilled and disseminated into rural communities, specifically communities that really don't receive the information in a timely manner. And by the time that is disseminated to those communities, they're already having devastating outcomes from that. So Is there something that you have found or you've seen any mechanisms that are working in Black rural communities that's been effective in disseminating information around COVID?
Well, I have come across many cases in which public health nursing organizations, volunteer nursing organizations, they are usually equipped and trained to take complex medical information out into rural areas. And I would kind of check and see what they're up to, and maybe they need resources and such. But I'm sure they'd be happy to work with Black colleges or Black community organizations and churches and such to try to bring a message to the most needy in those rural areas. But I would also check with public health departments either in the particular counties that you are addressing. Even though they may not show up on a regular basis before this pandemic has hit, they oftentimes do have resources. They're happy to work with people, but we have to kind of, as going back to Jonathan Bryant's cue, we kind of have to take the first step and see if we can get them galvanized and moving into our communities. But we can't do it alone, and we have to work with people who maybe we have not customarily worked with before. But I would say check with the well-being health centers in your area. Again, Visiting Nurses Association, and any other community hospitals, and community health centers oftentimes are very interested in community outreach.
All right, last question here, and so let's go to Reese Colbert. Reese, what is your question for Dr. David McBride?
Hi, Dr. McBride. My question to you is, how concerned are you with the misinformation, disinformation that targets our community? Erica touched on this a little bit earlier. I've seen kind of different conspiracies bandied about, like Bill Gates, is funding a vaccine, and so it's going to be some sort of world takeover. And I've actually run across people that I consider to be intelligent Black people that are saying things like, I'm not going to take a vaccine when it comes out. So what can we do to combat, or what kind of message can you send to Black people who are concerned or who have a mistrust for potential medical treatments in the form of a vaccine or anything else that will come out of this pandemic?
Wow, that's a great question. And everyone needs to turn that over many times after the show. But I'll just give you, some quick thoughts. That is a big barrier. Many people say, well, we have to have, step up the testing to super high levels and such. And we all are in agreement. But we also know that there will be people who are not interested in having any tests. They're scared of the results. They're scared they might be ostracized. There's a whole history of mistrust among the Black public, Black communities, individuals and such. There's a whole history of mistrust we can have a separate show on with regard to the medical establishment. I noticed that many people interviewed and such among the experts and the healthcare providers, I'm not sure we see a lot of down-home type Black physicians, men and women, in the overall body of some of that coverage. And so what I'm getting at is cultural competencies. And what I'm getting at is the fact that people from within the culture, let's say health promoters and medical caregivers who are from within the culture, they are most effective in overcoming some of these lay conspiracy ideas and resistance and fear, just straight up fear that a lot of Black lay people have with respect to exposing themselves to testing or to interviewing or to contact tracing and things of that sort. That's why we need to have that meeting between community lay elements as well as skilled medical caregivers, whether they're professionals or in the allied fields. We need to bring both of those elements together when we work with the Black public. A lot of those conspiratorial fears and such are grounded in history and culture of racism that has been embedded in much of healthcare provision throughout the history of this country.
All right.
Thank you.
Folks, the book is called, I want to get it right, From TB to AIDS, Epidemics Among Urban Blacks Since 1900. David
Hey,
McBride is the
Roland.
author. He is the yes,
Roland, may I make one quick comment? I have a new book.
real quick.
It's called Caring for Equality. Caring for Equality just came out. If you go to Penn State University African American Studies webpage, you'll get information on how to contact me. But the new book, Caring for Equality, it includes a lot that ideas and such that you'll find in From TB to AIDS. Thanks so much, Roland.
Okay. I appreciate it, sir. Thank you so very much. All right, folks.
You take care.
Thank you very much, folks. Coming up, and we're going to have something great coming up in just a moment, and that is the Black Women's Roundtable. It's going to be having their Power Table Talk series. Melanie Campbell, she is the president and CEO, National Coalition of Black Civic Participation. She is the convener of the Black Women's Roundtable. She is going to be joined by Karen Finney, Amy Allison, founder and president of She the People, Cleola Brown, president of the A. Philip Randolph Institute, Latasha Brown, co-founder, Black Voters Matter, Glenda Carr, co-founder and president, CEO of Higher Heights for America, Bishop Leah Daltrey, she's the author and co-convener of Power Rising, Dr. Avis Jones DeWeaver, author and founder of Exceptional Leadership Institute for Women, and Mignon Moore, author and co-convener of Power Rising. So they're going to be coming up in just a second for an amazing conversation. But what I did want to do this here, I told you, for the folks who join our Bring the Funk fan club, the folks who came in at $50 or more, we certainly appreciate that. We have been, it has been amazing seeing the response of folks supporting the show. I told you this week, those folks who gave at those levels, we're going to get a personal shout out on the show. Here we go. Aaron Brown, Almeda Graham, Andrea Cooper, Andrea Griffin, Bernard McIver, B-Mac Productions, Busy as a Bee Productions, Byron Greenwich, Kathy's Avon Corner, Candace Hill, Charlene Pitchford, Consuelo Cooks, Darius Simmons, David Coleman, David L. Brown Jr., Dexter Mucko, Diane Luther, Danella Houston, Ellis Lopez Travel Partners LLC, Gentle B Star LLC, Jermaine Wells, Jason Johnson, John Colburn, Julian Wilson, Kristen Graves, Lloyd Kirkendall, Lori Saunders, Lorraine Sweet, Maurice Patton, Maxine Chin, On Deck Printing, Pamela Whitfield, Paula Goddard, Renetta English, Robert Mariner, Rodney Bradley, Rosalind Wilson, Selena Tamu, Sherry Lynn Pringle, Sharon Rutherford, Sherman Wright, Sherry Ford, Sherilyn Parham, Steve Rogers, Tanya Whitley, Tracy Caraway, Vicky Wynn, and Vivian Burns. And so I certainly appreciate all of you. And so the folks, so what we do is the cutoff is 5 p.m. You give after that, then we'll be reading your name out on the show tomorrow. A few people hit me up saying, hey, I gave didn't hear my name, and so just send us an email, and now you know we're gonna double check first. You know we're gonna do that first. That's how we got to do that, Greg Carr. Some folks try to slide in there, we're trying to get a shout out. But we certainly appreciate all the folks who support Roland Martin Unfiltered. Thanks for the shortened conversation. Normally we go 2 hours with just our panel, but because of this special we're doing with a Black Women's Roundtable, they are going to now pick it up. Folks, don't go anywhere. Trust me, you don't want to miss the conversation. But again, I want to thank Reese. I want to thank Erica. I want to thank Greg for being on our panel. Thank you so very much. Great conversation there. And y'all, just do me a favor. Do not listen to that idiot Donald Trump. Don't walk around, put some disinfectants in your damn mouth thinking that's going to get rid of coronavirus. That's a doggone shame, the stupidity. But you don't want to miss tomorrow's show. Dr. Erica Hilton, y'all, she is hot. And Greg, she used a phrase, and Reese, she used a phrase, I'm just going to read this one here. She said she was 38 hot. Now, Erica, I didn't know what the hell 38 hot was. She said, that's a country phrase. And then, so she had to send me, it is, so Erica, you know about 38 hot, right?
All day long and cutting folks and daring them to bleed, baby.
Okay, so she had to send me this, Reese. 38 hot, originating down south. This term refers to someone being pissed off to the point of pulling out a gun. That's how mad she was watching Donald Trump today. So Dr. Erica is going to be with us tomorrow. Well, she's going to explain to us why.
Dr. Ebony, Jane Hilton. Is that your referring to?
Sorry, yeah, Dr. Ebony. She's going to be on. She's going to explain why she was so 38 hot. So I thought, let's do that. All right, folks. You want to check out Roland Martin Unfiltered? youtube.com/Roland S. Martin. And subscribe to our YouTube channel. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. It's Roland Martin Unfiltered. See that name right there? Roland Martin Unfiltered. Like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/Roland S. Martin. And don't forget to turn on your notifications so when we go live, you'll know it.
Hey everybody, this is your man Fred Hammond, and you're watching Roland Martin, my man, Unfiltered.
Hi, this is Essence Atkins, and you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Hey, yo, Peace World, what's going on? It's the Love King of R&B, Raheem Devon, and you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Hi, my name is Brescia Webb, and you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered. Ow. Well, I like a nice filter usually, but we can be unfiltered.
What's going on? This is Tobias Trevelyan. And if you're ready, you are listening to and you are watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
What's up? I'm Lance Gross, and you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Hi, this is Cheryl Lee Ralph, and you are watching Roland Martin Unfiltered. I mean, could it be any other way? Really? It's Roland Martin.
You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. It's Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered daily digital show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans contributing $50 each for the whole year. You can make this possible. RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Hey fam, want to check out Roland Martin Unfiltered, the blackest show on all of digital, cable, and broadcast. Check out our audio podcast. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. It's Roland Martin Unfiltered. Press play.